Um, so I did ketamine yesterday, and this is my fourth session. My third session was very informative. I swallowed the ketamine, so usually you hold it under your tongue and spit it out, and it gives you like the week-long, antidepressant, all of like anti-anxiety. It gives you all of that. But if you swallow it, it gives you like a trip, and that's like a psychedelic trip. But in that trip, it shows you stuff about yourself. So last one, I saw me laying in bed like I usually do, but I felt like a blanket of sadness around me. And then, I'm on my phone scrolling, and then it switched to me. I don't want to go into detail, but my spiritual trauma of maybe I'm already saved, but the way I was taught, being saved is a feeling, and I can't, because I'm numb, I don't have feelings. So, our preacher would scare us, into trying to get saved about hell and telling us how bad hell was, and I'd be so scared. I'd go home and I'd cry, and I would pray the prayer, God save me. But we were taught also that being saved is a feeling. You feel God's presence on you. And I didn't have feeling at that time, and I didn't know that I had a limited amount of feeling because I'm in shutdown. So I pray the prayer because I'm scared, but then I didn't feel anything. And I knew I didn't get saved because I felt the same. So then I would cry because I knew I didn't get saved. And then, I'd start wondering, like, well, why can't I get saved? And, it just started a whole process. I would do that every couple months, every time they preach about hell, and I traumatized myself. And so at one point, I did thought I think I was like the Antichrist, because I was like, why can't I get saved? But I I traumatized myself with every year going through that, crying, like all those, like that trapped emotion of fear, crying, you know, the feeling of rejection because I can't get saved. It's stuck in my nervous system, so I have a lot of spiritual trauma because of that. And I don't know, it showed me in my trip that maybe I am saved. Maybe I was saved the whole time, but I didn't know I was saved. Well, I did a prayer and I asked him into my heart, but I did it so many times and I never felt anything that, one of those times I probably got saved and just didn't even know it. And so I was just traumatizing myself. And so so I, saw that in my trip. I saw my sadness, and then I saw, what was the other thing? Oh, my shame. I think that I have so much shame. Like, I think my skin color, like, oozes black energy, demonic energy. Not really demonic, but just the darkest energy you can think of. And I think that I am chronically bad, and that my being is enough to is enough to be bad. Just my being, not even decision, just my being. And so those are three things. And there's another thing, but I'm still not quite clear what that means, or like the feeling. But those are the main three things I saw on my trip. And then throughout the week, it brought it up again. So the first thing is I felt sadness for the first time. Well, I felt sadness like when I'm healing, but I actually felt like during my day just sadness, and I'm like, oh wow, I am sad. And so I start crying because I feel sadness. I'm releasing like some pain from the past that made me feel sad, that I didn't know it made me feel sad. So I'm releasing that. And then, I'm thinking about my shame, and I feel my shame, and I'm crying about that, I'm releasing that. And my spiritual trauma, I'm crying and releasing. With ketamine, it just brings up stuff. And throughout that week I was just crying. And then which I love crying because I've had so many breakdowns. And I love it because it just I release more and more trauma. I heal. I become less hard. I was such a hard kid because of all of this negative emotion that was never released. I was so numb. So whenever something happened that I would be feeling sad about, I would feel sad, but my body would not really, I wouldn't go into it. I would just store it and just move on. And so I have so much stored emotion, a backlog of them, and it just made me so hard growing up. And so, I want to be a soft person, so it's like I've got to heal. I want to be girly. I used to think I was not attractive enough. I was not cute enough to be girly because I was bald. And just all that stuff came up, and throughout the week, I'm just like processing it, and I'm just crying bits and pieces. And then yesterday, I took my ketamine, and I didn't swallow it because I don't drink or smoke, so it's really hard on my liver. So I was like, I'll swallow 3 of them. So the first 3 sessions I swallowed it, the next 3 I'm just going to spit it out. So I did that, and I felt the immediate mood boost, and I was like, oh yeah, I have energy to do stuff. I got out of bed, and I cried yesterday because my anxieties. I still have a little bit of anxiety. So yesterday I went to the movies with my sister, and she doesn't really believe me much when I talk about anxiety and how I think I have a mean face and how it affects me. But this kid, he was just innocently staring at my face, just innocently. And, I'm telling I start crying, and my sister's like, why are you crying? He could be staring at whatever. And I'm just like, I know that he's probably not staring at me, but he was staring at me, but I know he's probably just like, oh, whatever. But my mind instantly, when I see someone staring at me, my mind tells me that they're staring at me because I have a mean face and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So then I start crying, and then she's like, I don't want you to be sad. And then, we get over and watch the movie, but uh-oh. But, I was crying yesterday about that. And then today, I'm trying to stay off social media, and I feel like in my head, boredom, stillness, all of that, like, if nothing's going on, it feels boring. And like my whole life, like, I'd go through neighborhoods and I'd see no one outside, and I would be bored. I remember before I went to the home, I was like 3 and 4, and I would be so bored. And I remember the feeling of boredom. And even throughout, when I was at the home, like, I'd be so bored out all the time. And so I hate sitting around and not doing anything because I hate being bored. That's why I'm always on my phone. I'm always scrolling because I need that constant stimulation of dopamine to make me not feel bored. Well, today I start journaling, and I'm staying off my phone listening to podcasts, and I'm just like so bored. And then with ketamine, it brings like awareness back up. It brings that stored trauma, brings it up to the surface so you can process it and release it. And so I'm feeling bored, so I meditate, and I'm like back to doing stuff. I'm just bored. And then, like, I remember in my ketamine session, me laying there feeling sad, and I'm like, oh, so this isn't boredom, this is sadness. And so, like, I just start bawling because growing up, well, all those times I was bored, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh wow, I was actually just really sad. And like the youngest I was, I think I was like 3, and I was like, oh wow, this isn't boredom. I was sad. My mom, she had so many like psychological issues, and she was just such a depressed, like, just, she just gave up, like, and that, like, towards the end of her life was the beginning of my life. So I inherited that sadness, that, just giving up. And I start bawling because I'm like going through all these times where I remember like having to get up, go outside, walk around. Like, I need a stimulation. I don't know what to do. I'm so bored. And now I'm like, oh, I was sad, and my body was telling me it was boredom. Because back then I couldn't feel sadness. I didn't know what it was because I was like in shutdown, but I knew what boredom was. So my body was telling me I was bored. And so I'm like, thinking and journaling, I'm like, okay, so this is why I always have to be scrolling, always have to be busy, because when I stop and I don't have the stimulation, I'm just there. My sadness, the sadness I've been carrying my whole life, it comes to surface, and I think it's boredom, and so I do stuff to, like, stimulate myself, go outside, but it's sadness coming up, and my body doesn't like being sitting in sadness. And so once I realize that I'm not bored, chronically bored, I'm chronically sad, and I just start bawling for like 15 minutes from the gut, like it's like a big release, just because my whole life I've been like this, and it's such a crappy life to live, and I'm really happy that I'm 26 and 27 going through all this trauma. But it's just sad that my whole life growing up, like, that was what it was. It was all negative emotions. Like, I also realized I was, what is it, developmentally, develop, huh? Developmentally arrested. So that means my nervous system stopped growing at 12. And that also, when I read about that, I'm reading a complex trauma book. But when I read about that, I'm like, oh wow, that makes sense, because for the longest time, I was 14 and 15, and my nervous system is stuck in like the 12-year-old like mindset. And I'm like, I knew I was weird, I knew I didn't fit in. Every time someone would get to know me, I would start being so silly, and like I'd have that 12-year-old humor, and they'd think I'm weird. And like, I just thought I was a weird kid. And now it makes sense that because of how I grew up with no, I didn't bond with anyone. I didn't bond with my mom, my house parents, no one. And because I grew up like that, with a negative environment, with all these juvie type girls, like, my system like knew I had no chance of growing, so it just shut down at 12. And so my nervous system stayed at 12, but I still kept maturing and growing like a normal person. So when I was hanging out with people my age, I would, you know as in a 12-year-old mindset, making friends is about like doing fun things and how you make them feel, like being crazy. But the older you get, making friends is about connection. And I didn't realize that. So, I'm 13, I'm 15, 16, and I'm still trying to, like, haha, like, be funny and like try to make friends that way. I didn't even know that until, after I left. I was like 23 or 24 when I realized, like, oh, making friends is about just connections, about talking. I didn't even know that. It was because I was developmentally arrested, and like, just so much stuff I'm learning about myself through ketamine, through reading this trauma book. It's just like I was screwed on every angle. I have such a sad life. I'm so traumatized. And obviously, I'm healing and I'm growing, but it's just so sad to realize I grieve so much of what I could have been if I just had, you know, a somewhat decent, parent, someone I could bond with, and it's just sad. It makes me really sad. But yeah, my third or fourth ketamine session has been, you know, it's been, I think it's what, day one, I released my sadness, more layers of sadness, and just bawling from that. I've cried my eyes out more this year than I've done, my whole life, But I mean, I love crying, and I really want to cry and like release more and more trauma. It's going to take forever just because I am built on trauma, but I really want to heal, and I really want to find my purpose and, you know, do what I'm meant to do. So I know that there's just no way that I am this age, never been arrested, never been in jail, which is crazy just because up until like a year ago, I felt nothing, no remorse, nothing. And it's like now I'm like praising myself from feeling, now I feel sadness, I feel empathy, not empathy, I feel like vulnerable. Like when people are vulnerable, like makes me sad. So I feel, I feel compassion, that's what it is. I feel my vulnerableness, I feel like I'm learning more feelings, and it makes me happy. But before I didn't, I didn't have those. And it's just crazy that I've, never been in jail. Like, the Lord really saved me from that. And it's like, I've never drunk, I never smoked, I'm not having sex, and like, just randomly, I want to start healing and I want to live better. And it's just like, there's just no way that someone can have my life and just change it, and there's not like a higher calling for me. Like, there's just, I don't know, I feel like I'm meant to heal and to change, but I think I feel like it's because I have like something in store for me in the future, and there's just no way around it. So I'm really, also, like, I feel set apart when I'm with guys. Like, I know that, like, I mean, I've been praying. I'm like, instead of setting me apart, like, help me build resistance so that I don't fall for some guy that's not right for me. But like, I don't know, everything's like coming together, and I'm just realizing I am meant for something great. I don't know what it is, and it might not be a billionaire, but I feel like I'm meant for something, and I'm set apart and reserved. And right now, what I need to do in this chapter is heal and, get out of survival mode. But I don't know, I'm just really happy and grateful for all the times where I could have just been a mess and just went off the deep end and never came back. I don't feel anything, and like, I haven't done any of that, and I'm just like, that wasn't me, it wasn't by me, but that was definitely by God. And so I'm very happy for that. And yeah, healing, and that's good.